Welcome to another crochet tutorial with Cozy Rosie UK. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make your very own corner-to-corner infinity scarf. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss out on another one of my crochet patterns again, and of course hit the notification bell so you get told as soon as they go live. I'm going to be using the Hayfield Spirit double knitting yarn. This is a 80% acrylic, 20% wool yarn, so it is nice and snuggly. It's a DK weight yarn and it comes in a 100-gram ball. The recommended hook size for this yarn is 4mm, so I do have a 4mm crochet hook. You can use whatever weight yarn you want, but if you want it to match the sizing on the pattern, you would need to use a similar weight yarn. You don't have to use this one, but if you really like this colour, it's shade Autumn. You can find the written pattern over on my blog. I'll pop a link in the bio for you, and of course you can purchase the printable version of the pattern too over on there as well. So gather your materials and let's get started. So the first thing we're going to be doing is to create a slip knot and popping that onto our 4mm crochet hook. When we're ready to start, we've got our crochet hook all set up, we're going to start by chaining 6. So we just yarn over and pull through. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. We're then going to put the yarn over the hook and place a treble crochet, which is the UK terms, or a double crochet into the 4th chain from the hook. So remembering that this loop on our hook doesn't count, we've got 1, 2, 3 and 4. So number 4 is where we're going to place our crochet hook. So yarn over and insert your hook into one of the loops of the chain. We're going to yarn over and pull through. So we've got 3 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through 2, 2 loops left on our hook, yarn over, pull through 2. And again into the next one of our chains, so not into that space but into that space there for our next chain, we're going to place another treble crochet. With those 3 loops on our hook, we pull through 2 and we pull through 2. In that final chain, we're going to place a 3rd treble crochet. And that creates our first corner-to-corner block. So each block is made up of a chain 3 and 3 treble crochets. So at the end of row 1, we are going to have 1 block. Going into row 2, we're going to repeat that process of chaining 6. So we yarn over and pull through 6 times. That's number 1, number 2, number 3, 4, 5 and 6. I'm then going to turn my work because I'm working on row 2. So when I turn, I bring the tail yarn, so the end of the yarn, towards my crochet hook. Just helps find exactly where we're working. And again, we're going to treble crochet into the we're going to treble crochet into the 4th chain from the hook. So I'm going to yarn over the hook and count down my chains, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Oh, I missed one, look, there it is, 1, 2, 3 and 4, so that we can place 1 treble crochet into the 4th chain from hook, and then we place a treble crochet in the 2 remaining chains. You just remember to yarn over before you insert your hook. There we go. So we now need to slip stitch. So this block, we want it to join onto this block here. So this is where it's really important to keep your tail yarn towards your hook, because that chain space we created on that first row is where we're going to slip stitch. So you've got 1, 2, 3 trebles from row 1 in that first block, and we want to slip stitch into that gap there. So literally right into the big chain space, we simply insert the hook, yarn over, pull through, and straight through that loop on our hook. And then we chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. We're then going to work 3 treble crochets into that same chain space. So we yarn over, insert the hook, yarn over through that gap that we created on the previous row, and complete the treble crochet. We're going to place 2 further treble crochets into that exact same chain space. So that's number 2, and this is number 3. So at the end of row 2, yep, that was row 2, we have 2 corner to corner blocks. So with row 3, it's exactly the same. We are going to chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Turn our work so that our tail yarn is near our hook, and yarn over, ready to work into that 4th chain from the hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Place that first treble crochet in UK terms, and then place 2 further in the 2 remaining chains. So number 2, and there we put number 3. So keeping that tail yarn towards your hook, you're going to slip stitch into the chain space from the previous row. So just insert that hook, pull through and pull through, and then we place a normal block. So we chain 3, 1, 2, and 3, and we're going to work into this chain space where we've just chained, placing a 3 treble crochets. 1, working into that same space again, number 2, and then a 3rd one into that same space again, and that's 3. We need to join this block into that chain space there. You might have to wiggle it about a bit to find it. You just slip stitch to join to that other block, and then you chain 3, and right underneath that chain into that same space we're going to place a further 3 treble crochets. So at the end of row 3 we have 1, 2, 3 blocks. Row 4 we are increasing again, so when we do a chain 6, that is an increasing block. So we chain 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Turn our work to make sure that our tail is near our crochet hook. And once again, we're going to place a treble crochet in the 4th chain from hook. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we place a treble crochet into the 2 remaining chains to create that increase block. So each time we're chaining 6, we're adding another block onto the row. So at the end of row 4, we're going to go to 4 blocks. Keeping your tail yarn towards your hook, we're going to slip stitch into that chain to bring those 2 blocks together. And then we chain 3, just to work a standard block. We're going to place 3 further treble crochets into that same chain space. To complete that block. It's always worth checking you've got all 3, remembering that you've got your chain 3 at the beginning and then 1, 2, 3 treble crochets. We're then going to slip stitch into that chain space there. and chain 3 to place another block. We're going to work those 3 treble crochets into that same chain space just underneath the chain we've just made. Number 2 and number 3. We're then going to slip stitch into that chain space at the end of this row to join. We're going to place one further block because we're on row 4, we need 4 blocks. So this will be block number 4. So we just work into that chain space underneath the chain we've just made, and we place those 3 treble crochets to create another block. There's 3 there. My yarn is attacking me. There we go. So at the end of row 4, you will have 4 blocks. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So row number 5, we're going to place another increase block. So we start by chaining 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. In the 4th chain from hook, we're going to place a treble crochet. I'm now counting up from the bottom because I find that quicker. Double checking I've done it right. It's quite a rhythmic pattern, the corner to corner, because it's quite a nice, easy repeat. So before I just slip stitch, I'm just going to make sure that my tail is near my hook, and then I'm going to slip stitch into that block there to join that on top of that, and then I place another block. So I just chain 3. I place 3 treble crochets. Oh, I missed the, there we are, into that same chain space. Oops. There we go. If this is all flapping about and in the way, you can just fold it out of the way so you know where you're working. That's what I tend to do. I'm going to slip stitch into that next block to join as normal and chain 3, placing a further block underneath that chain 3. Slip stitch to join into the next block. And chain 3. And place a further 3 treble crochets into that next chain space to create the next block. And then into the final block, we're going to slip stitch to join. Chain 3. And place the last 3 treble crochets of row 5. There we go. So at the end of row 5, you've guessed it, we have 5 blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You can also count along the side if you want to. You should have 5 blocks along the bottom. So if you start counting from your tail yarn, you'll have 5 blocks going along. So we are going to repeat this until we have a total of 10 blocks. So going into row 6, we are going to do our chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We're going to treble crochet into the 4th chain from the hook and continue to slip stitch to join, and then place those blocks by chaining 3 and placing 3 treble crochets as well. I'm going to meet you back at the end of row 10. By then you will have a total of 10 blocks across, and we will be able to move on to decreasing. So keep working along through row 6 through to row 10, where you'll end with a total of 10 blocks, and I will meet you there. So I've just reached the end of row 10, and I have a total of 10 blocks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So at the end of row 10, we are actually going to start decreasing. So for row 11 and every other odd numbered row, we're going to place a decrease block. So slightly different. Normally we have been chaining 6, but instead for a decrease block, we simply chain 1, turn our work, and we're going to slip stitch across the 3 treble crochets. So just literally insert your hook, pull through a loop and straight through the loop on your hook. You do that across all 3 treble crochets. And then we're going to slip stitch into the chain space. And that puts our hook where we need it to be for the beginning of row 11. So for a decrease block, we chain 1, slip stitch across the 3 treble crochets and into the chain space. And then we simply just place a normal block where we are. So we chain 3 and place our 3 treble crochets into the chain space, just as we have for all the other, in between all the other rows. So instead of placing an increase block at the beginning of all the odd numbered rows, we're going to place a decrease block. So that decrease block was very simply a slip stitch across the 3 treble crochets and then into the chain space. Oops. Lost my place, lost my train of thought there. So with row 11, the rest of the row remains the same as we've been doing. You simply slip stitch into the next block and place a chain 3 and then 3 treble crochets into that chain space all the way across. And your even numbered rows, so row 12, 14, etc., they all have the increase block. I'm going to explain why at the end of row 11. So let me just skip ahead for you. And I'll meet you at the end of row 11. So once you've slip stitched across here, work your way across and I'll meet you at the beginning of row 12. So I'm just working my last block on row 11. And what you're going to find is at the end of row 11, we still have 10 blocks only. So as you can see, we've started to create a flat edge here by decreasing at the beginning of row 11. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and we still have 10 only. By decreasing, you don't add another block on the start of the rows. So when you chain 6 and work into that chain, you're adding an increasing block. When you slip stitch across the top, you add a decrease. So now on row 12, we're going to continue to make this side longer and keep this side flat. So when you're working on the longer side, so if you look where my tail is, you can see that this flat edge is going to remain flat all the way up now because we're going to place a decrease row. Decrease at each time we're working at this end. So if you imagine that when you get to the end of row 12, you're going to work all the way up here and you're going to see that it's already flat. So you're simply just going to slip stitch. You don't need to add another block on. So let's work row 12 as an increase block. So we're going to start by chaining 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So exactly the same as we did before. We just place a treble crochet in the 4th chain from hook and into each chain each of the remaining 2 chains. Oh, squeaky, squeaky. Sorry about that. So that puts our block. So we've added a block on at the start of the row 12 because it's an even numbered row. And then we just place our blocks as normal. So work across row 12. And when you get to the end, you're going to have done your total of 10 blocks. So when you get to this point here, you're just going to slip stitch to join the blocks together, ready to go into row 13. Now 13 is obviously an odd numbered row, so we don't need to place an increase block at the beginning. We are going to place a decrease block. So we're going to go through that one together so that I can make sure that you're happy with it. So I'm going to speed this up so you don't have to see me faffing around making lots of mistakes. And I'll meet you at the end of row 12. So I've just completed that last block in row 12. So I'm just simply going to slip stitch. So I can see I've reached my shorter of the flat edges. So there's my long edge and this is my short flat edge. So I'm simply just going to slip stitch to join those together. I can count my blocks again if I want to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So that's perfect. We only want 10 blocks from now on. And all we need to do is just a slip stitch to join that to extend that flat edge. So going into row 13 is an odd numbered row. It's also on this flat edge that I want to start extending. So I'm simply going to chain 1 and turn and slip stitch across these 3 treble crochets and into that chain space. I'm then going to chain 3 and continue to work blocks all the way along here. So going into row at the end of this row, I'll be on the long edge and on an even numbered row. So I will be increasing by chaining 6. So on those odd numbered rows, we're just going to slip stitch across and chain 3, place our blocks as normal. On the even numbered rows, we're going to chain 6 so that we increase and continue to grow our scarf. So the total number of rows that you're going to need to place is 60, and that will give you an estimated measurement of about 40 inches. And I'm going to meet you at row 60, ready for us to, well, square off or rectangle off the end of our project. So keep on growing your scarf, and I will see you at row 60. So I have now completed a total of 60 rows, and I incorrectly told you to make it 70 inches long. This is actually 40 inches long for the cowl size. 70 inches would be a complete scarf in this, most definitely. And you can do that. You can just keep going. And you'll probably need more than one ball to make a whole scarf. But I'm loving how beautiful this variegated yarn or even self-striping yarn comes up. So now that we've completed row 60, I'm just going to check, I think I've already chained, I have. What we're going to do now is create the top end or the bottom end so that we can sew these 2 edges together. This is probably the easiest bit, and you already know how to do it. If you haven't figured it out, don't worry. We are simply going to be doing the decrease stitch that we've been doing on these odd numbered rows on every single row that we do on both ends. So we simply chain 1 instead of chaining 6, because we don't want to add any more length or any more blocks onto this. So we chain 1, and then as we have been doing, we're going to slip stitch into the top of each of these trebles so that we can build a block on the inside, I suppose would be the best way to describe it. So we're actually reducing the number. So this is going to be row 60. So at the end of this row, we are going to have 9 blocks. Oops. So we've chained 3, and just as we have with all the other decrease blocks, we're simply going to do our 3 treble crochets after the chain 3. Don't just do a chain 6 because we're no longer increasing, and just continue to complete row 61. So for the end of this scarf, you are literally going to place a decrease block at the start of each row, and your rows will decrease by 1 block each time. So row 61 that we're working on now will only have 9 blocks. I would just try and tell you what all the blocks would be, but I can't concentrate on the crocheting and do any form of counting. So just about get my stitches done properly. I'm not holding my hook right, sorry. There we are, that's better. I do find it useful when crochet hooks have a little somewhere you can touch to actually know if you're holding it the right way. So yeah, so going into row 62, we're going to have another decrease. We're going to decrease each time. So at the end of row 62, you're going to have 8. 63, we'll have 7, etc. And you're going to end up where you only have 1 block left. So keep going and working all of your next rows until you only have 1 block left. It's going to take you 9 rows to get to there. So row 69, I will meet you back there. So we are nearly there. As you can see, I've got 1 block left to make. Turn, slip stitch into these last few trebles. Into that space. 1, 2, 3. 3 treble crochets or double crochets if you are the US terminology kind of person. There we go. So that's how it happened. We are going to slip stitch into this chain space here. And this is the end, oops, of the crocheting. I'm going to do another little chain 1 just to secure it. I'm going to leave a long tail because I'm going to be sewing this up. So probably, I don't know, I'm not very good at measurements of tails. A little bit more than normal is what I would say, because you haven't got much to sew up. I just knocked my needle on the floor. That's what that noise was. So I'm just going to pull this through so that's nice and secured. And move my crochet hook out of the way. I have grabbed my needle. So the first thing I'm going to do is obviously make sure that my scarf is all the same direction. I don't want to twist in it. And I'm simply just going to line up these 2 edges. Now, because this is a variegated yarn, there is the chance, well, at least for me, that you may see my sewing up, because as you can see, there's 2 different colours. So there are 2 ways that you can do that. I am not going to slip stitch this because I want it to be a more flexible seam on here. I don't want it to be a stitch. I'm actually going to whip stitch it as tightly as possible to a certain extent so the colours don't show too much. So once you've laid it flat, put your 2 ends together. I'm literally just going to go in and out all the way across. But obviously you can see our stitches all the way down there. So to get my needle to where I need it to be to start sewing up, I'm just going to weave it in and out of one side so that I get to the top here. And then we can start sewing up. So I am literally just placing the 2 edges together. And I'm just going to put my needle through both the front and the back. I'm going to make sure I'm not working through the yarn because I'm not looking to create a knot. I'm just sewing them together. I'm going to go into pretty much every stitch I can. So that's how it's going to show. But when I tug a little bit tighter, pretty much disappears because it's a nice holey fabric. So literally this is called whip stitching. You're literally just going over the top of one side and through the other. and it just means that it's secure. You can give it a bit of a tug, and no one's really going to see that join unless they really look for it. It's pretty neat. Just going to make sure that they are all lined up. I do check every now and again because I am very good at moving my work around. Oops. Then not putting my stitches necessarily in the right place. And I want them to end at the same point, ideally. Just continue to work your way. Every now and again, give it a bit of a gentle pull and keep working all the way. As you can see, I am no seamstress at all. If I can, I will slip stitch to join as much as possible. All the ends do my head in. I'm not trying to gather this, I just don't want the stitches to show very much. So I'm just making sure every now and again that my edges here are lined up. You can secure them with a stitch marker if you wanted to. I'm not that way inclined, I'll risk it. Just take my time and check every now and again. Just kind of fold it out and then give it a gentle tug, and it kind of disappears. In some respects, although this wool is incredibly hard to undo if you make a mistake, it sews up really nicely because of the wool content. It kind of sews onto itself. So you can, with wool, you can usually felt wool. There isn't quite a high enough wool content in this to be able to felt it, which is a shame. So that's my two edges joined together. So the last thing to do is going to be to weave our ends in. Now, I am a superstitious person. I have a massive paranoia of things coming undone. Nothing ever has, but I'm just going to put a little knot in there just before I weave in these edges. Now, this is going to be my right side, so I'm going to weave in, although it doesn't really matter. I just want to weave in these edges because both sides look the same. So when you're weaving your ends in, I'm going to work down where I've just sewn up, but I'm going to stick to this side because it's not going to be quite as noticeable. Or should I go down that side? Maybe go down the yellow side, because I don't want anyone to see me weaving my ends in. But I'm also very conscious. When I weave my ends in, I check the direction the make that I'm making is likely to be pulled or played with. And it's unlikely that someone, or myself, I'm going to wear this, I can't even, I'm not giving this to anyone, this is mine. I'm not going to pull up and down on this seam, so it's a good place to weave in my edges. If I move it in and weave it in this way, there is a chance it could get pulled and the ends loosen or the weaving in loosen. Not had it happen, but I'm also going to be very careful about how I weave these in. So for me, I always weave in my ends at least 3 times in different directions. So I go in one way, out the next. I don't pull tight on my weaving in. I'm not looking to bunch this up. I just want to bury this end in as carefully as possible so that it won't come back out again. It's the only time I actually enjoy splitting my wool is going through another stitch. So that's number 3. I'm going to give that a gentle pull. Now I am going to do 4 on this because that's not gone in very far. Oops. Okay. One final pull through. I'm going to pull back the other way so that that is nice and secure. Take my needle off. And I'm just going to snip this. So again, when you're snipping your ends, you're not looking to pull on it tightly.
In fact, the opposite. You want it to sit nicely at the edge there, because when you give it a pull, that end completely disappears. So one more edge, that's not an end, move that, it's going to confuse us. There we go. One more end to weave in, and then we have completed our project. So while I weave this in, I'm going to remind you that if you wanted to download the printable version of this pattern, it is available on my Etsy shop and also my Ravelry shop. I'll link both of those down there for you in the description box. You can also find a link for this yarn, which is Hayfield Spirit in shade Autumn. It's one of my favourite yarns. It does have 20% wool content, but it's still incredibly soft. I don't find it itchy on my skin, and I'm not sensitive, but I hate itchy wool. So I do highly recommend this wool as well. What else can I tell you about? Oh yeah, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, because of course you never want to miss another one of my crochet tutorials again. So don't forget to hit that bell, or the notification bell as well, so that you always get reminded and get told when there is a new tutorial. So that completes my corner to corner cowl. I really hope you've enjoyed making it, and I would love to see your completed corner to corner cowl. So feel free to head on over to either Instagram or Facebook. You can find me on over there, Cozy Rosie UK, and you can tag me in you wearing your lovely cozy cowl. Thank you so much for joining me for this tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed learning how to corner, and of course, how to create your very own cowl. See you again soon.